Hey everyone, it's Riley from Echidna Sewing here. Welcome back, and today I'm going to show you how to make your very own Christmas stockings. Here's what you're going to need. You'll need 2 fabrics, about 1/2 meter of each. I'm using cotton today. You'll need sewing scissors, some pins, and some clips. You'll need our pattern. You can find this one on our website. I've gone ahead and assembled the main stocking piece already. An iron and an ironing board. I'm using the wool pressing mat today. You'll need a sewing machine. I've got the Brother NV50S. I've got Rosanne thread in a grey colour, and I'm using T&C's regular point needles. Now let's get into it. So from our main fabric, we're going to cut out 2 pieces of our main stocking and also 1 piece from our stocking hanger tab. Now I'm going to double my fabric up, so you can see here, so I can cut 2 out at the same time. Alright, there are your first 2 pieces. And I'm just going to use this bit of scrap fabric that I cut off to cut out my stocking tab on. There's our stocking tab cut out, and that's all the pieces you'll need from your main fabric. For your lining fabric, you'll again need 2 pieces of your main stocking piece, and you'll also need 2 pieces of the stocking cuff. There's our lining pieces. There is your 2 stocking cuff pieces. Now we can get into sewing. Before we start sewing, we're going to need to fold and iron our hanger tab to conceal our raw edges. This is very similar to creating your own binding. So you fold your hanger tab piece in half lengthways and just press it flat with your iron. Open it out and then fold each side into that first folded center line. Just like that, and press again with your iron. Then the last thing to do is just fold that in half once more and iron it flat. That's what it should look like. Now we can sew a row of top stitching down either side. Now that we've finished our stocking tab, we can go ahead and start assembling our main stocking. So grab 1 piece of your main fabric and 1 piece of your stocking cuff, and you'll see that your cuff has 2 lengths of sides, 1 short side and a longer side. We'll need to align the short side to the top of our main stocking piece with right sides together. And you'll see here that the cuff actually overlaps the main stocking piece. This is normal because when we turn our cuff down at the end, it'll sit a lot nicer on the stocking. All right, so clip those together or pin if you prefer. And we're going to sew a straight stitch all the way down this edge with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Don't forget to back tack at the start too. On my machine, I know that from the edge of my foot to the needle in the left-hand position is 1/2 inch. However, every machine is different, so just check your measurements before you start sewing. And back tack at the end as well. Trim your excess threads, and now we can trim down this seam. Should look a little something like that. Now go ahead and repeat that for your other main stocking piece. Now that we've sewn both of our pieces together, go ahead and open up that cuff, and we're going to press this seam flat. And when you press this seam flat, you want to make sure that this seam is pointing towards the main fabric. If it's pointing the other way, the cuff won't sit flat against the stocking when we turn it right side out. Just go ahead and press that seam nice and flat. And while I'm here, I'm just going to iron out all of these creases that I have in my fabric. Wonderful, should look like that. Go ahead and do that for your other piece as well. Before we sew our lining pieces on, we need to place our hanger tab on. So go ahead and fold that in half. And we're going to place it about 1.5 inches in from the side on an angle so that when you flip it up, it'll sit out like that. Once I'm happy with my spot, just going to pin that in place. Make sure when you pin the hanger tab down that the pin sits a little further in, because we're about to sew across this top line and we don't want to catch that pin when we're sewing. Now we can go ahead and pin our lining pieces on. And when you pin these on, it's very important to make sure that your stocking pieces are going the same way. You can see here, both of my stocking pieces are going the same way. We don't want it like that when they're going the other way. So just pin or clip with right sides together along the top. Then you can sew that with a 1/2 inch seam allowance and a straight stitch. Don't forget to trim your excess threads. Then we can trim this seam allowance down. Go ahead and do that for your other stocking piece now as well. I've gone ahead and pressed open the seams that we've just sewn. It's important to remember that when you're pressing open these second seams, that they do point towards the stocking and not towards the cuff. So all we need to do now is place our right sides together, making sure your main fabric is with your main fabric and your linings with your lining. Match up all of your sides. Then we can pin or clip around the entire circumference and sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance and a straight stitch, making sure that we leave about a 3 inch gap at the bottom of our lining so that we can use it to turn the stocking right side out. When I go to sew my pieces together, I'm going to start down here at the bottom of the lining, so it's easy for me to sew one straight line all the way around and finish so I can leave a gap at the end. Make sure you back tack at the start as well. When I'm coming up to the cuff point here, I want to make sure that I'm pivoting around these corners so that when we turn the cuff right side out, it'll sit flat against the stocking. Only needs about 2 or 3 stitches. Now that I'm approaching my starting position, I'm going to make sure that I have about a 3 inch gap, back tack at the end. Should look a bit like a boomerang. Now just go ahead and trim off the excess seam allowance all the way around. But at the gap down the bottom, you want to leave all of that seam allowance in. Now that I've trimmed my seam allowance down, all we need to do is turn this right side out. Great, so that's all done. All we need to do now is tuck in this turning hole, like so, and just sew that shut with a straight stitch. Before we finish our stocking, the last thing we need to do is just iron flat all of these seams. Now all we need to do is just put our lining inside of our main fabric. Should look like that. And then the last step is just to fold your cuff down. There's your finished Christmas stocking. Now, if you're interested in any of the products that we used in this video, feel free to check out our website for more information. Also, don't forget to tag us on Instagram so we can see your creations too. Thanks for watching and happy sewing.